Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, and today we're gonna be reacting to.
Why did American cars fail in Europe?
I don't know
Why
if they
did America?
failed
They did, it wasn't popular.
because I always see them in music videos, like the normal cars too. The Cadillacs. We see a lot of BMWs.
Which is European.
Oh, then Cadillacs.
That's American.
Yes.
It's not popular though.
Oh.
It's kind of like an exotic a little bit, I guess. But no, it did fail. It's not popular. American cars are not looked down upon in Europe.
They look down upon. How
Yeah,
come?
poor
Why
quality.
is that? Oh, poor quality.
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah, it's not. European cars are. Well, but even here though, European cars are known as better cars than American though. European, even
Like
Japanese cars are known better than American. So
like they're like considered luxury.
European cars, not all, but a good chunk of them, yes, considered
The ones that are here,
foreign.
they're not luxury. Oh, well,
Well,
yeah.
I mean, it
never
depends on
mind.
how expensive the car is. You can find like
okay.
a Volkswagen that is not a luxury car.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Like it depends on, if it's like a Volkswagen Passat, that's not like a luxury. But if you're talking Audi, then no, that's more on the luxury side. So
American cars fail in Europe? Let's explore. I'm sure you're all aware by now that American cars and American manufacturers simply couldn't take off in Europe.
But
No
is this
matter how
one?
much they tried,
Cadillac.
two of the big three
Escalade, I think.
simply couldn't get enough people interested.
That must
in
be
the
a
cars.
new
Why
one.
did this
Yeah, it
happen?
looks
Well,
nice.
the simple answer is they didn't do it properly, and that requires us to start with looking at the one automaker that did do it properly: Ford. Ford is, to all intents and purposes, an American automaker. However, when it came time to expand into the European market, Ford actually put a fair amount of thought into it. They did have a presence before that, but the Blue Oval's European outfit, aptly named Ford of Europe, was founded in 1967, merging the automaker's UK, Germany, and Ireland offshoots. That's the Republic of Ireland, by the way. In 1967, the first model to appear from this new merger was the original Transit, which would go on to become the literal face of vans in Europe, certainly the UK, and rightfully so. Ford of Europe continued to do the European expansion properly by opening production facilities all over Europe.
That
Today, the
makes
European
sense.
arm of Ford operates 7 manufacturing facilities on the continent, in the UK, Germany, Romania, Turkey, and Spain. Ford also did this whole thing right by developing and designing cars specifically for the European market. The Fiesta, although they tried to market it to North America, which failed miserably, went on to become such a huge success in Europe that they discontinued it last year. Nice! Yes, I'm also bitter about the Fiesta's discontinuation, but it really was hugely successful in Europe, and the same applied to one of the C-segment's darlings, the Focus. Ford's first crossover SUV specifically designed for Europe, the Kuga, also did and still is doing great, and the same could be said of their Europe-specific minivans, the C-Max, the S-Max, and the Galaxy, Galaxy spelled with a Y at the end, by the way, which all showed the continent that minivans don't have to be boring. So there we are, Ford of Europe did everything correctly as far as an expansion to Europe is concerned, which is why they're still very successful here. So what happened to the other two? Let's start with everybody's favorite manufacturer of totally reliable cars, trust me bro, General Motors. Like Ford, General Motors also had a pretty substantial presence in Europe by the latter half of the 20th century. They had acquired Opel fully by 1931, and then in 1990, they acquired Saab and managed to destroy them in just 20
What?
years.
I would think the cars wouldn't be as successful in Europe because of the size of the roads.
yeah, bigger cars. Do you need like to
We
make
don't need cars this big.
yeah, you need to make different models.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's tough to compete with European car makers because there's a lot of them. It's so
And lifestyle, not too much people want. Like they don't need more car options per se.
yeah, like why would they buy American versus European?
Yeah.
Like there's
Yeah.
no reason.
Job. 4 years prior in 1986, GM also officially formed General Motors Europe, which relegated GM's operations in Europe to Opel, Vauxhall, and then Saab. Now we arrive at the early to mid-90s. This was the time when another, seemingly unrelated but actually very relevant to the story, automaker was entering the European market. Daewoo. Daewoo cars started to trickle into Europe in the 90s with a focus on value for money. The Tico, based on the 80s Suzuki Alto, was a beats-taking
The
the bus type of vehicle, but it
Tico.
sold like hotcakes, especially in former Yugoslavia. One above that was the Nexia,
Remind
which
me
was a
a
small,
Honda.
goldfish-sized hatchback.
Little Honda.
Little Honda.
And you could have a sedan too. At the top sat the
This is
Espero,
like
which, while
the
journalists
classic
at the time
car
were
we have
offering a
here
shit
too.
ton of equipment
Some
for
of the shapes
basically
looks
no money.
familiar.
Continuing into the late 90s, Daewoo's Lanos, Nubira, Evanda, which was also
Look,
known under 10
BMW.
different other names, and the horribly ugly Takuma were all doing fine in Europe. And then Daewoo
this
went
is like
bankrupt and General
minivan.
Motors scooped them up in 2002. With General Motors now at the reins of Daewoo, they devised one of the stupidest, most befuddling strategies I've ever heard. General Motors founded Chevrolet Europe in 2005 in Switzerland with the promise that the Chevrolet brand would return to Europe. However, there was a problem. The real Chevrolet's lineup back then was entirely unsuitable for the European market. The Avalanche, the Impala, the Silverado, the Blazer, you get the idea. Big cars, even
What's wrong with Impala though? Impala seems like a European car though. I don't know why Impala wouldn't fit in Europe.
I
bigger
don't like an
engines,
Impala.
terrible.
I mean, I don't like it either, but in terms of the size.
I don't like Impala. The people in Europe definitely don't like it.
No, but in
Impala.
terms of size, I feel like Impala would be like a European side type of vehicle.
Gas mileage. None of these qualities are something that the average European buyer was looking for. So what did Chevy do? They rebranded Daewoo models from their Korean arm as Chevrolets and sold them in Europe. Yep, instead of doing the Ford thing and opening proper manufacturing facilities in Europe and designing cars specifically for the European market, Chevy just crossed out the letters Daewoo and wrote Chevrolet in Sharpie. And hey presto, new car. This resulted in abominations like the Chevy Spark, the Aveo, the Lacetti, the Captiva, and my personal nut favorite, the Orlando. Sure, you could still buy the Corvette and the Camaro in Europe, but these were meant to be Chevy's volume sellers. I think that the only somewhat good car to come out of this whole Daewoo bullshit was the Cruze. They were in Macedonia volume sellers because Macedonia is a poor-ass third world country and people needed cheap cars. Eventually, Chevrolet withdrew from the European market in 2013. By that point, GM had already shuttered Saab due to their bankruptcy issues a few years prior, leaving Opel as the only presence General Motors had in Europe, until Stellantis acquired Opel in 2017 and made them 15 times better, that is. So there we are, Chevrolet failed in Europe because the Chevrolets that most people were buying were just thinly disguised cheap Korean cars that were about as desirable as getting a sledgehammer to your face. That leaves us with the last remaining member of the big three, Chrysler. Originally, Chrysler had a decent presence in Europe thanks to the merger of Simca, Roots, and Barreiros. Apologies if I didn't pronounce that correctly. And eventually, the PSA group would continue selling Chrysler vehicles throughout the 80s badged as Talbots. Or at least I think so, that's all the sense I could make of the research I did online. It's a little complicated. So that technically means that Chrysler did the Europe presence thing properly at first. They rebadged various vehicles from the aforementioned brands, all of which were European, and sold them as Chryslers in Europe. That's fine. So what happened? Well, Chrysler was acquired by Daimler AG in 1998. Leading to the creation of Daimler Chrysler. This gave Chrysler money, which they would eventually burn completely, and Daimler was losing so much money on Chrysler that they would sell them again in 2007. However, this also gave Chrysler a channel to re-enter Europe once again. And they did. Now, as I mentioned up there, GM's big
I'm
mistake was
surprised
convincing
that this was the company that would make it into the European market.
Chrysler?
Yeah.
So what do you think it would be? Because Ford is there already. Chevy failed. What other American brand would be in Europe? Cadillacs are big and expensive. GMC's too big for Europe.
Yeah, there's nothing.
Yeah, too big.
Europeans that they're buying a Chevrolet when they were in fact buying a Daewoo. In other words, they plucked cheap cars from their Korean arm and sold them to Europeans. So what was Chrysler's big mistake? Chrysler's big mistake was not bothering with basically anything. The relaunch in Europe featured the compact Neon, the Stratus midsize sedan, and the Voyager
This is
minivan,
nice.
or as you may know it, the Town and Country. Sure, the Voyager offered a diesel engine and a manual transmission because Europe, am I right? The Stratus, which was actually a Dodge vehicle by the way, was available with either a 4-cylinder or a
Dodge. There's a Dodge. There's a couple Dodge models, I guess, that could be okay in Europe.
V6 engine. Remember, mid-sized sedan in Europe in the 90s with no diesel power. Here's an interesting fact. The cops in Macedonia used the Stratus for the longest time as a patrol vehicle. And as far as I've heard, all but a few of them went memories up, and I'm pretty sure that nobody else except the police force actually bought them as civilian vehicles. Either that or they all exploded or destroyed themselves, I don't know. Chrysler's not bothering with basically anything continued well into the late 2000s. The widely hated Dodge Nitro was worse than other European SUVs in just about every way, and it was too big for Europe. The 300C, while it did receive a wagon version, which was just a Dodge Magnum with a front end swap, and a diesel engine from Mercedes, was still worse than the European competitors in just about every conceivable way. Chrysler even tried to sell the widely hated Sebring to European customers. Yes, that includes the convertible too. Again, these were all vehicles designed for the American market, and Chrysler simply brought them over and updated them slightly to meet European regulations. They were practically unchanged from their American counterparts. And that's a problem because it's a well-known fact that American and European car buyer tastes are vastly different. Oh, how could I forget? Chrysler also tried selling the PT Cruiser in Europe. That went about as well as you'd expect. The writing
PT
was on the wall.
Cruisers who?
Chrysler.
Oh.
300C completely lost to the E-Class A6 and 5 Series, which is hilarious because the 300...
Yeah, I think he's correct because the markets are different in the sense that A, roads are smaller in Europe, so you want smaller cars. But B, also the gas is way more expensive, so you need a less gas consuming
That's
cars.
true.
American cars are very much gas guzzlers for the most part. So
So why do you think European cars work well here? So well here?
nice, well, they're considered luxury. They're nice designs, good technologies, last a good amount of time, safe vehicles. I mean, I feel when it comes to vehicles, European vehicles are the best in the world. I would say Japanese is maybe bang for the buck, but in terms of if you have a little bit more money, I think it's European cars. Yeah, because it's just a little nicer. Japanese is a little cheaper, a little more rough around the edges, but it's also really good.
C of that time was based on the
At
E-Class.
the
The
time,
Stratus,
I
meanwhile,
remember is that Volvo was one of the safer
Yeah,
cars.
Volvo has always, I've always known Volvo also as one of the safest cars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
lost out to stuff like the Passat, the Honda Accord, the Renault Laguna, the Audi A4, the Mercedes C-Class, and so on. The Jetta and every other C-segment sedans were running rings around the Sebring, and every other European minivan, the VW Charan, the Ford S-Max and Galaxy, yes, they were made by Ford of Europe, it counts, the Peugeot 807 and its siblings kick the Voyager's ass 10 times over. Eventually, Chrysler just completely lost its mind and decided to continue its presence in Europe in an entirely new and balls-to-the-wall way. The second generation Lancia Thema was the second generation Chrysler 300C with a few Lancia badges, and the Lancia Voyager was the same thing but for the later town and country. I also realized I completely forgot to write in the script that Lancia models were sold as Chryslers in the United Kingdom for no reason that I can think of. There probably is a reason, probably a weird, unusual reason either way. They did the long walk of shame back to North America, and eventually they wound up selling to Americans all of two
I wonder
cars.
why Elon Musk thought he was different to decide to bring...
Tesla,
Yeah.
because Europeans, as I said, gas issue. Gas are expensive, and Tesla don't take no gas.
But even like a Cybertruck, would that fit
Takes no gas.
logistically?
Cybertruck is illegal in Europe.
Oh.
You cannot get Cybertruck in Europe.
How come? Oh, because of the shape?
Yeah, the shape doesn't meet European regulations.
One of which recently went out of production. Nowadays, Stellantis is focusing its efforts on other Mopar vehicles, and Chrysler is left with just a single model, the Pacifica minivan. But that one is pretty good from what I've read, so that's okay. And those are the reasons why American cars in Europe failed. Thank you so much for watching this video, everyone. If you liked it, be
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of European car manufacturers though, so you don't. This market is oversaturated. You don't need the American cars. I would understand if the American cars were cheaper, then you can maybe try competing at the price, but they're not even cheaper. So what can you offer over European cars? I don't see anything.
Guys, of course, let us know your thoughts. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Join the Discord. And as always, share as much kindness as possible.